This is a mullet haircut. Business up front, party in the back. And this is a mullet bike. Big wheel up front, small wheel in the back. And today we're trying this mullet setup with the 29-inch wheel up front, 27.5 wheel in the back versus a full 29er setup with the 29-inch wheel front and back to figure out which one is funner and which one is faster. Funner ain't even a word, bro, but I'm up for a challenge. Let's get it. You see, most bikes come from the factory with 29-inch wheels front and back, but this Trek Slash Gen 6 came with that mixed wheel and or mullet setup. Hell yeah, bro, mullet for the win. That bigger wheel up front offers all that rolling power, giving you that monster truck feel and allowing you just to plow through anything you want on the trail. And the smaller 27.5 rear wheel keeps things light, fun, and playful, allowing you to snap this bike around and have so much more fun on the trails. But the downside to running this smaller rear wheel is that it can actually make your bike roll slower, or at least that's what people say. But how much does wheel size actually make a difference for average riders like you and like me? To find out, we're gonna be running both setups, doing back-to-back laps to find out once and for all which setup is funner and which setup is faster. The bike we'll be using for today's test is my friend Zach's Trek Slash Gen 6. The Slash was designed with adjustable links that allow you to run either a 29er or a mullet setup without compromising any of the bike's geometry. So you're not gonna slacken that head tube angle, that seat tube angle, or mess with that bottom bracket too much. But let me have Zach explain this in a little bit more detail.
So on the new Gen 6 Slash with the high pivot, you can actually replace these lower links for your shock with these ones that are designed to run a 29-inch wheel. What that does is it effectively lowers where the shock's mounting to raise that back end up to accommodate the new 29-inch wheel without affecting the geometry too much.
And the wheels we're using for today's test are the Hunt Enduro Wide V2 mullet wheels. These things feature a 31mm rear rim width, and they got a wider 33mm rim width, oversized 17mm alloy axles, dual sealed Revo bearings, beefy Hunt high engagement hubs, and I got these things mounted up with my very favorite Maxxis rubber. I got the Assegai 29 by 2.5 up front with a Max Grip EXO Plus casing and DHR2 27.5 by 2.4 tire in the rear. And for the rear 29-inch wheel that we're swapping out, we got the same Maxxis DHR2 rubber on there, 2.4 width. These are just a little bit different. You can see these are the i9, so that's high engagement hubs with the chrome spokes, but should be very little difference in weight with both of these being alloy wheels. Very little difference in stiffness. So really the only thing in theory we should be able to feel is the difference between a 27.5 and a 29-inch diameter on the wheels. Oh, and there's a major difference in price. You see, these Hunt Enduro Wide V2 wheels are on sale right now for just $503 for the pair, which if you guys do any mountain biking or have been looking at upgrading your wheels, you guys will know that's a steal. Compare that price to something like these Industry 9 wheels. These things cost over $1,600 for the pair. So you could literally buy 3 sets of Hunt wheels for the same price, or actually a little bit cheaper than a set of Industry 9 wheels like this. So check out the link in the video description if you guys want to get yourself a set of these Hunt wheels. It does help support the channel. But right now, let's go into some of the pros and cons of the mullet wheel setup. All right, so the list I got here, Zach, for like the pros and cons, right? So the pros of a mullet wheel setup is like downhill performance with the ass clearance, snappier around corners, and more playful for the pros.
Definitely.
Now for the cons, I have the rollover speed.
Yeah.
It's not gonna roll quite as much, right?
It doesn't climb as good as my previous
The climbing performance. Slower? I don't know, we're gonna find, like, is it actually slower downhill? Like how much slower actually is it? Bottom bracket height, if, and like how it would change your geometry if your bike wasn't designed for that mullet setup.
With switching the links on the lower shock on this bike, my bottom bracket height should be pretty much the same, so I'm not too worried about that today.
Yep. But I mean, those are the major pros and cons. Like, leave a comment down below if you guys got more to add to that list. But the real question is, how much will it actually make the difference out on the trails? Which setup is actually funner and which setup is actually faster? So here's how it's gonna go down. We're gonna start with the Mullet setup the way it is right now. We're gonna do multiple laps on flow trail, tech trail, and we'll see if we can find some other features like maybe some of the jump lines or something. Oh yeah, and we're here at Mount Bachelor Bike Park, so lift access, gravity focused, downhill smash and runs. It's gonna make it super easy for us to get in a ton of laps and really test this out. Woo! After we're done testing that Mullet setup, we'll switch the links and everything over, throw that 29-inch wheel on the back, and we'll do the same test over again to see which one is actually funner and faster, like I said. Now, most of today's riding is gonna be done by Zach. I'm gonna have the GoPro chesty on him, so we're gonna time using the GoPro footage for those downhill laps to get the time on this, and I'll get some sweet shots of him riding. So stay tuned to the end, you guys aren't gonna wanna miss it. Hell yeah, bro, let's get it.
All right, guys, this will be the first timed run with the Mullet setup down some tech trail. Let's get it. Let's go. First impressions, these wheels are really nice. I'm usually riding carbon wheels all the time, and these ones feel just as stiff with that wider profile. Feeling pretty good so far. Big jump. Oh yeah, I'm used to riding like some 5.0, so this feels like home to me. See how the 29 fares here a little bit on the next run. Hit the double black feature on both runs. Get through it. That's nice. We drop. Oh. All right. Cool big Rudy section. Let's get down. Oh yeah. All right. Big air out right here. And stop.
All right, so back here at the house editing, we tried to use Strava to time those laps, but the Strava wasn't working right. So I got the time for you now. So for the Mullet setup on the tech, that was 2 minutes and 1 second, just over 2 minutes and 1 second on the tech section with the Mullet setup. But during that run right there, he actually ended up getting a pinch flat. So we had to fix that tire. Could have affected the time a little bit, but we'll go ahead at the end of each of these sections. I'll jump back here to me editing. I'll go through the time. We'll see which setup was actually faster, and then we'll go to Zach's final thoughts at the end to see how he felt. And keep in mind, he was just going off a feeling because his Strava wasn't working, so he didn't have the exact time. So this would be interesting. Keep watching. We got some darts here. We're gonna try and patch this up real quick. Run double downs when you go to the bike park. Yeah, run double downs, not EXO Plus. So those of you guys that don't know, nerd out on Maxxis real quick. So EXO Plus, the tire is only thicker on the side. It's got that extra sidewall, but double downs have the double thickness all the way around the tire. And that's kind of where it flatted, right? Is right on the spot where it doesn't have all the thickness that.
All right, so we got the tech trail done on the Mullet setup. Now it is time for cone run, which is gonna be our flow test on the time. See how this Mullet setup does on here with these Hunt wheels. Alrighty, dropping. Let's go. Woo! Oh yeah, such a good trail. Bachelor is one of the favorite bike parks in Oregon for sure. Always a fun one. So rock kicker here, just up and over. Just a little jump flat. 27.5 setup is definitely really fun. Nice flickable rear end. All right, and there's that one.
All right, so there we go. Just over 46 seconds, Mullet wheel, flow trail. I'm gonna fast forward through some of these riding clips, try and keep this video short and sweet and to the point as possible. All right, 27.5 mullet wheel setup is done. So now we're gonna go ahead and swap out that smaller 27.5 rear wheel for the bigger 29er, changing out those links right there as well. And then we'll go back, like I said, do those test laps over again and figure out which one's funner and which one's faster. So what does it take to change out? What all do you have to do
so
to
pretty
be able
much
to
you
change
have to
that out?
remove this whole piece down here, but Trek prefers if you loosen all your pivots before doing any torque, because they have kind of a specific torque order these days for these. So figured might as well not mess up what they tell you to do, so we're gonna do it right.
All
Make
right.
sure that everything's working as it should.
So you gotta loosen all the pivot bolts and then be able to swap that right out right there. And that's gonna adjust that geometry to where when we throw the bigger 29-inch wheel on the back, the bottom bracket and the seat tube angle and the head tube angle and all that stuff should maintain, you know, relatively the same. The only issues we ran into at all swapping it over was the rear fender. Not really an issue, just was a little tight, so we swapped out that rear fender. And then I had a 203 rotor on the 29er wheel, but forgot that it was a TRP rotor, so a little bit too thick, and that was just gonna be rubbing on those brake pads the whole way. So we're swapping out the rotors right now to the Shimano rotor. Full 29er, let's get it.
All right, here's our timed run down Rattlesnake with the full 29. My first time riding this bike full 29er, so let's see if it's faster. Here we go. Let's go. And done.
So I decided just to fast forward right to the end there. So we had 2 minutes and 2 seconds, a little bit over. So 2 minutes and 0 in there. 2 minutes, 2.95 seconds. So like almost 2 seconds slower on the 29er with the tech trail.
All right guys, here's our timed run on the full 29er on the flow trail. Go.
All right, flow trail numbers are in 45.45 seconds. So I guess faster? Not by much, right? Now remember, Zach didn't have any of these numbers, so I thought it'd be interesting to just sit him down and see what it felt like. What setup actually felt slower, what setup actually felt faster, which setup actually felt more fun, and which setup he's gonna continue to ride on his new Trek Slash Gen 6. Let's cut to that.
So it's tough to say, like the 29er definitely felt faster, rolling straight speed and through the corners, but it does seem to hang up on rocks more than I thought it would versus the 27.5. You know, I've been riding the 27.5 setup, or mullet setup I should say, for 6 months now, so I'm super used to it, so that could, you know, have something to do with it. But both super fun. The 29er is definitely feels faster in the flow stuff, but surprisingly through the tech, I do think the 27.5 is still faster because I can kind of place that rear wheel where I want it and it doesn't get hung up on as much. But I mean, either way, whether you're riding 29er or 27.5, it's still fun on this bike in particular, especially with that geo swap that you can do with the rear linkage. But yeah, I would, personally, I'd say I think I'd stick with the mullet on this bike. I just feel like it still has great rollover that way. It's a little bit more fun in the air. I just think it's a little snappier through the corners, but that's gonna be everyone's own personal preference. But it wouldn't surprise me if the 27.5 laps were faster, just because that's what I like to ride. But on the straights, the 29ers could be faster. It's real tough to say. Also forgot to mention, guys, I think why I personally like the 27.5 better is with this high pivot design, the whole purpose of that is instead of having a straight upward axle path where when you compress, the wheel goes straight up, With that high pivot, it actually gets longer as it gets lower. So that back wheel goes kind of down and around anything you go over. So with the bigger rear wheel, it makes the bike longer under compression. And then it just feels like it hangs up on the rocks and roots worse because of that. You just can't get over it as fast versus the 27.5 wheel. It just seems to kind of kick right up and over it.
So there you go, guys. Mullet versus 29er. Let me know down below which setup you're running. If this video helped you guys at all, share it with a friend. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting you guys stoked to go ride and have some fun, people.